Disclaimer: this story is based on true events and real-life experiences. Some names, locations, and identifying details have been changed to protect privacy. The events described may involve sensitive situations and adult themes. Reader discretion is strongly advised. It had been a long day, the kind where every mile on the road seems to stretch farther than the last. I was driving alone, my destination a small town several hours away, when suddenly, without any warning, my car shuddered violently and came to a slow, reluctant stop. The dashboard lights flickered, and a sinking feeling settled deep in my chest. I tried to restart the engine, but it only coughed once, then fell silent. I glanced around. The highway was deserted, stretching endlessly into darkness. No houses, no streetlights, just the occasional silhouette of trees swaying in the night breeze. My phone, nearly dead, had no signal. Panic started to creep in. I was alone, miles from the nearest town, and the night felt unusually heavy, almost oppressive. After a few moments of frozen hesitation, I forced myself to take action. I grabbed my flashlight from the glove compartment and stepped out, the cold night air immediately brushing against my skin. The wind carried an eerie sound, almost like whispers through the trees. I walked along the road, hoping to find some sign of life, a passing car, a house, or even a gas station, but the darkness seemed to swallow everything. It felt like an eternity before I spotted a dim light in the distance. Relief surged through me as I realized it was a small hotel tucked away at the side of the road. Its neon sign flickered intermittently, casting a pale glow onto the gravel parking lot. I quickened my pace, hoping someone inside could help me with the car or, at the very least, provide a safe place to wait until morning. The hotel itself was quaint, almost charming, but there was an odd stillness to it that made me uneasy. As I pushed open the heavy wooden door, a soft chime echoed through the lobby. A woman behind the counter looked up, smiling warmly, but with an intensity that was hard to read. "Good evening," she said, her voice calm yet somehow distant. "Can I help you?" I explained my situation, trying not to show how shaken I really was. She listened quietly, then nodded, suggesting I could park my car near the back and stay the night if I wished. The gesture felt like a lifeline. I thanked her and moved toward the dimly lit corridor that led to the rooms, each step echoing ominously against the polished floor. As I entered my room, locking the door behind me, I couldn't shake the feeling that something unusual was about to happen. The room was simple, yet tidy, with a small bed, a nightstand, and a window overlooking the darkened parking lot. I set my bag down, trying to calm my racing heart, but the quiet hum of the hotel, the shadows that seemed to stretch longer than they should, made sleep feel impossible. Little did I know, this unexpected breakdown was only the beginning. The night ahead would unfold in ways I could never have imagined, revealing secrets and confessions that would change everything I thought I knew. The moment I stepped out of my car and saw the hotel's dim light in the distance, a wave of relief washed over me. Every nerve in my body had been on edge since the car had broken down, and now, finally, there was hope, somewhere to rest, somewhere safe until I could figure out what to do about the vehicle. As I approached the building, the gravel crunched under my shoes, each step echoing in the quiet night. The hotel was small, almost unassuming, but the faint glow from the flickering neon sign gave it a strangely inviting air. Despite the darkness around it, the warmth emanating from inside made it feel like a sanctuary. I pushed open the heavy door, and a soft chime announced my arrival. The lobby was modest, with an old wooden reception desk and a couple of worn armchairs. Behind the counter stood a middle-aged woman with a calm, welcoming smile. Her eyes seemed to study me just a little too intently, but I didn't have the energy to overthink it. I explained my situation, my voice tight from both exhaustion and anxiety. My car had broken down in the middle of nowhere, my phone was almost dead, and I had no idea how far the nearest town was. She listened patiently, nodding. "You're lucky," she said softly. "We still have a room available, and you can park your car in the back. We'll make sure it's safe overnight." I felt a sense of gratitude I hadn't expected. The thought of sleeping somewhere warm, even for a few hours, was comforting. After checking in, She handed me a small brass key and gave brief directions to the room. As I walked down the narrow corridor, I noticed the faded wallpaper and creaky floorboards. The dim lighting cast long shadows that seemed to flicker and stretch, creating shapes that played tricks on my eyes. A shiver ran down my spine, but I pushed it aside, telling myself it was just the exhaustion and the unsettling night air. When I reached my room, I paused for a moment, listening to the faint hum of the hotel's air conditioning. The room was small, clean, and tidy, with a single bed, a nightstand, and a window that overlooked the nearly empty parking lot. I set my bag down and tried to calm my racing thoughts. I considered calling someone for help, but my phone had only a sliver of battery left, and there was still no signal. Feeling restless, I decided to take a short walk around the hotel grounds to clear my mind. The gravel path behind the building led to a small garden with overgrown plants, their shadows swaying in the breeze. It was peaceful, almost serene, but there was something slightly unsettling about the silence. I felt as though the hotel itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. Returning to the room, I sank onto the bed, trying to relax. Despite the comfort, a nagging feeling lingered in the back of my mind. Something about the hotel, the quiet, the way the receptionist had looked at me, it didn't sit right. I couldn't explain it. Little did I know, the night was only beginning. The hotel, quiet and unassuming, was about to become the stage for a series of events that would leave me stunned, confessions, secrets, and truths that I never expected to encounter on a night that began with nothing more than a simple car breakdown. After settling into my room, I tried to relax, but sleep wouldn't come. The quiet of the hotel felt almost unnatural, each creak of the floorboards or hum of the air conditioning amplifying my unease. The shadows outside the window seemed to stretch and twist, making me question if I was imagining shapes moving in the darkness. Unable to shake the restless feeling, I decided to step back into the lobby. Maybe a small distraction would help calm my nerves. As I opened the door, the soft chime echoed down the hallway. The receptionist had stepped away for a moment, leaving the lobby empty, but I noticed someone sitting in one of the armchairs. He was a guest, or at least he appeared to be, though there was an unusual aura about him. Middle-aged, sharply dressed, and exuding a calm confidence, he gave me a brief nod as I entered. His eyes, dark and penetrating, seemed to study me with an intensity that made me slightly uncomfortable. I hesitated for a moment, debating whether to engage or retreat to my room, but curiosity got the better of me. "Long night?" I asked, my voice tentative. He smiled faintly, a mixture of charm and something I couldn't quite place. "You could say that," he replied. There was a strange rhythm to his words, deliberate and measured, as if he was choosing them with care. I introduced myself, explaining briefly about my car breakdown and my unexpected stop at the hotel. He listened quietly, occasionally nodding, but there was a depth in his gaze that suggested he was listening for more than just my words. The atmosphere was oddly intimate, though I barely knew him, and a shiver ran down my spine. After a few moments of small talk, he leaned slightly closer. "Not many people end up here by accident," he said, his tone low and almost conspiratorial. "Sometimes, things have a way of guiding us to where we're supposed to be even if we don't realize it." I laughed nervously, unsure how to respond. The hotel had seemed quiet, almost comforting, but this interaction brought a different energy into the room, an unsettling mix of intrigue and caution. I felt drawn in despite myself, compelled to listen, yet aware that my instincts were warning me to remain careful. We continued talking for a while. He shared vague stories about travelers he had met and experiences in the hotel, never giving full details, but dropping hints that suggested much more than he was saying. There was something secretive, almost magnetic about him. Each word seemed to carry weight, and I found myself leaning in, wanting to hear more, even though a part of me screamed to leave. As the conversation continued, the hotel lobby seemed to shrink around us, the dim lights casting shadows that danced across the walls. The quiet of the night outside contrasted sharply with the intensity growing inside. I couldn't know it yet, but this brief encounter would set the stage for the shocking confessions that were about to unfold. A night that began with a simple car breakdown was about to turn into something far more unexpected and unforgettable. The lobby felt different now, charged with a quiet tension I couldn't ignore. After our brief conversation, the man's presence seemed to dominate the room, his calm confidence almost magnetic. I found myself lingering longer than I intended, pulled in by a curiosity I couldn't quite explain. He glanced at the hotel bar in the corner, a small space with dim amber lighting and a few neatly arranged bottles. "Would you care to join me for a drink?" he asked, his voice low and inviting. It was casual enough to sound innocent, yet there was an unmistakable undertone that made me hesitate. I paused, debating whether it was wise to accept. Alone in a hotel with a stranger could be risky. But something about the night, the strange circumstances of my car breaking down, and the unfamiliarity of the hotel made me want a brief reprieve from the tension building inside me. I nodded slowly, and he led the way toward the bar. The small lounge area smelled faintly of polished wood and aged whiskey. We took seats on the worn leather chairs, and he ordered 2 glasses of something amber-colored, handing one to me. The warmth of the drink was comforting, a sharp contrast to the cool, shadowed air outside. I sipped cautiously, trying to mask my nervousness. At first, the conversation was light, trivial talk about travel, hotels, and the unpredictability of the road. But gradually, his words began to shift. There was a subtle change in tone, a softness that suggested he was about to share something deeper. I could feel it in the way he leaned forward slightly, the intensity in his eyes that demanded attention without a single raised voice. "You ever meet someone and feel like they're carrying a secret, something heavy they can't quite put down?" he asked suddenly. The question startled me. It was intimate, probing, and I wasn't sure if I should answer. He wasn't asking about me, at least not directly. It was rhetorical, meant to prepare me for what was coming. As the minutes passed, he began revealing fragments of his own life, small admissions, almost confessions, carefully chosen to draw me in. Each revelation was unexpected, personal, and slightly unsettling. I found myself listening with a mix of fascination and apprehension. The hotel, quiet and unassuming just moments ago, now felt like a stage set for a story I wasn't sure I wanted to be part of. The conversation flowed naturally, yet there was an underlying intensity neither of us could ignore. His demeanor was calm, but the weight of what he was hinting at made my pulse quicken. The night outside grew darker, the wind whispering through the trees, amplifying the sense that something extraordinary was about to unfold. By the end of that first drink, the subtle tension had shifted into something undeniable. The casual invitation had opened the door to a world I hadn't anticipated, a night that would reveal confessions and truths that no one should ever encounter by accident. The hotel, my unexpected refuge from a car breakdown, had become the backdrop for an evening that would change everything. The warmth of the drink in my hand did little to calm the unease settling over me. The hotel lounge, quiet and dimly lit, seemed almost suspended in time. The man across from me leaned back slightly, as if weighing his next words carefully. The tension between us was subtle but tangible, like the charged air before a storm. Then, without warning, he began to speak in a low, measured tone. "I haven't told anyone this before," he said, glancing around the empty lounge as though the shadows themselves were witnesses. "But sometimes, circumstances push people to reveal truths they would otherwise keep buried." I nodded cautiously, unsure whether I wanted to hear what he was about to say. Yet curiosity had me rooted to the chair, my heart quickening. There was something about his voice, calm, confident, but vulnerable, that made me feel compelled to listen. He began recounting an event from his past, something deeply personal and almost unimaginable. At first, the story seemed innocuous, a tale of decisions made under pressure, but with each sentence, the gravity of the situation became clear. I felt a mix of shock and disbelief as his words unfolded. The quiet of the lounge made the confession feel heavier, more intimate, and impossibly real. As he spoke, I noticed subtle changes in his expression, hesitation, a quick glance away, then back with eyes that seemed to plead silently for understanding. The story revealed layers of hidden truth, exposing mistakes, regrets, and secrets that no one would ever expect from a man who appeared composed and confident. My mind struggled to process what I was hearing. I wanted to respond, to offer comfort, but the magnitude of the confession left me momentarily speechless. A shiver ran down my spine, not from fear alone, but from the intensity of the moment. Here, in this quiet hotel lounge, with nothing but the dim light and the shadows around us, I was witness to a truth that was raw, unfiltered, and deeply human. It felt as though the walls themselves were absorbing the weight of the story, keeping it suspended in the air between us. At some point, he paused and took a sip of his drink, the silence pressing down heavily. "You don't have to say anything," he murmured, almost apologetically. "I just needed to tell someone. Someone who might understand." I swallowed hard, realizing that the night was no longer just about a car breaking down or finding a place to sleep. It had become something far more profound, a crossing of paths that neither of us could have predicted. The hotel, once a simple refuge, had transformed into a confessional, a space where hidden truths were laid bare in the quiet of the night. By the end of his initial confession, I was left reeling, my mind racing to comprehend the implications. The sense of normalcy from earlier had vanished completely. What had begun as an ordinary night had become a journey into the unknown, setting the stage for even deeper revelations yet to come. The silence after his first confession hung heavily in the air, thick and almost suffocating. I sat frozen, my mind racing to piece together the fragments of the story he had just revealed. The dim light of the hotel lounge flickered slightly, casting shadows across his face that made his expression appear both vulnerable and haunted. I could see the weight of his words settling on him as much as it did on me. Then he leaned forward, his eyes locking onto mine with an intensity that made my stomach tighten. "There's more," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I sensed a tremor of hesitation, as though revealing the next layer of truth might change everything. I nodded, urging him silently to continue, even though I wasn't sure if I wanted to know. What followed was nothing short of shocking. He shared a part of his life that went far beyond mistakes or regrets. It was a secret so personal, so dangerous, that I could feel the room's energy shift as he spoke. Each revelation seemed to pull back the layers of the man I had thought I understood, exposing vulnerabilities and truths that no one outside these walls had ever known. My heart pounded, adrenaline and disbelief mingling as I tried to process what I was hearing. The night outside had grown colder, and the wind whispered against the windows in tandem with the growing tension inside. His confession became more detailed, more intimate, and impossible to ignore. I felt a strange mixture of fear and empathy, a moral conflict that made it difficult to look away. The hotel, once merely a stopover after a car breakdown, had transformed into a stage for these raw, unfiltered truths. At one point, he paused, running a hand through his hair, and let out a long, heavy sigh. "I don't tell people these things," he admitted, his eyes searching mine. "Most wouldn't understand. But tonight, I felt like I had to. I don't know why you're here or why you had to hear this, but I needed someone." I tried to speak, to offer reassurance, but my words faltered. The gravity of the situation weighed on me, leaving me almost paralyzed. His revelation was not just personal, it had consequences, ramifications I hadn't anticipated. And yet, I felt an odd connection forming, a strange intimacy born of shared silence and the courage it took to speak the truth. Time seemed to stretch. Minutes passed like hours as he revealed the full scope of his secret. Each detail escalated the tension, drawing me deeper into the narrative, making me complicit in the night's unfolding drama. By the end, the room felt charged with a strange electricity, a combination of fear, awe, and empathy. I realized then that nothing would feel the same afterward. The night, which had begun with a simple car breakdown, had become a journey into hidden lives and buried truths. And though I didn't yet know the full consequences, one thing was certain: the revelations were far from over, and the events of this hotel night would linger in my mind long after the sun rose. By now, the night had grown heavy with tension, each shadow in the hotel lounge seeming to press closer around us. His revelations had escalated beyond anything I could have imagined, and a strange mix of fear and curiosity pulsed through me. I felt caught in the gravity of his story, unsure whether to speak, flee, or simply stay and listen. Then came the moment that shifted everything. He paused mid-sentence, his gaze locking on mine, and a subtle tremor ran through his hand as he reached for his glass. "I need you to understand," he said, his voice low and urgent. "What I'm telling you, it changes things. It changes how we see ourselves, and maybe how we see each other." At that instant, the air in the room seemed charged with anticipation. The hotel, quiet and dimly lit, felt almost alive, as if it too were aware of the fragile moment unfolding within its walls. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the windows and sending a shiver down my spine. It was as though the universe had paused, holding its breath while we confronted a truth that couldn't be ignored. He revealed the final part of his confession, a secret so personal and shocking that it felt impossible to process. My mind raced, trying to reconcile the man sitting calmly across from me with the weight of the truths he had exposed. I felt a mix of emotions: disbelief, empathy, fear, and a strange, reluctant understanding. This was no longer a simple night of chance. It was a pivotal moment, a turning point that demanded a decision. I realized then that I had a choice. I could step back, pretend I hadn't heard anything, and return to the relative safety of ignorance. Or I could stay, bear witness, and acknowledge the truth he had entrusted to me. The decision weighed heavily, each possibility carrying its own risks and consequences. As I struggled with my thoughts, he leaned closer, his voice barely audible over the whispering wind. "Whatever happens next," he said, "you need to decide for yourself. There's no right answer, only what feels true to you." In that instant, I understood the gravity of the night. The hotel, which had begun as a refuge from a car breakdown, had become the setting for a profound moral and emotional crossroads. My actions in the coming moments would shape not just the night, but the way I carried this experience forward. A sudden noise outside, a car door slamming, or perhaps just the wind, made us both flinch. The moment of tension was broken, yet the decision still lingered, heavy and unavoidable. I took a deep breath, grounding myself, and made my choice. Though the consequences were uncertain, one thing was clear: the night had irrevocably changed us both. What started as a random encounter at a hotel now carried the weight of a shared secret, a transformative experience that neither of us would forget. The turning point had arrived, and there was no turning back. Morning came slowly, the first pale rays of sunlight creeping through the hotel window. The night's tension had faded, replaced by a quiet stillness that felt almost surreal. The hotel, once a place of mystery and confessions, now seemed ordinary again, just a small building tucked away on the roadside, its secrets hidden in the shadows of the night. I sat on the edge of the bed, replaying the events in my mind. The man's revelations, the intensity of our conversation, the way the hotel had felt like its own world, all of it weighed heavily on me. Yet, amidst the lingering shock, there was a strange sense of clarity. The night had forced truths into the open, and though some were difficult to accept, they had to be acknowledged. The hallway outside was quiet. I could hear the soft murmur of the receptionist starting her day, the occasional creak of doors opening and closing. It all felt strangely normal, as if the night's confessions had been a private interlude, hidden from the rest of the world. I realized that the experience had changed me. I would never look at chance encounters, unexpected delays, or quiet hotels the same way again. I decided to check on my car, hoping that daylight would bring a solution. The vehicle, parked safely near the back of the hotel, seemed almost untouched by the chaos of the previous night. I inspected it carefully, realizing that while the mechanical issue remained, the sense of helplessness I had felt in the dark seemed diminished. Surviving the night, confronting the confessions, and processing the emotions had somehow restored a sense of control and perspective. Before leaving, I returned briefly to the lounge, curious if the man would still be there. The chairs were empty, the bar untouched. It was as if he had vanished, leaving no trace beyond the memories of the night. I felt a mix of relief and longing, a wish to understand more, yet also an understanding that some stories are meant to be incomplete, left to linger as questions rather than answers. As I started the car and prepared to continue my journey, I reflected on what had happened. The night had been unpredictable, full of shocks and confessions I could never have imagined. Yet, it had also been transformative. I had witnessed courage, vulnerability, and the raw power of truth. I had been forced to confront emotions I wasn't prepared for, and in doing so, I had grown. Driving away, the hotel slowly disappeared in my rearview mirror, just another building on a quiet stretch of road. But the memory of that night, the confessions, the tension, the unexpected connection remained vivid. I knew that while the encounter had ended, its impact would stay with me forever. The night had begun with a simple car breakdown, but it had led me into a deeper understanding of human complexity, the fragility of secrets, and the ways in which strangers can change our lives in a single, unforgettable night. Some nights come and go unnoticed, but others leave an indelible mark. That night at the hotel was one I would never forget. 18.